What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a horror film that was released in theaters a little while ago now, and I did not catch it when it was in the theater. I just waited to watch it on VOD because, to be quite honest, I read a lot of the early reviews for this movie, and I did not have a lot of high hopes for it. And the film I'm going to be discussing with you today is The Strangers Chapter 1. And if you haven't seen, it was several months ago on my YouTube channel now. I watched the original Strangers for the very first time. I'd never seen it before. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was a perfect movie. I really loved the way it built atmosphere and tension early on, and there was a lot of genuinely horrific moments, but I feel like in the middle to back half of the movie, it started to rely pretty heavily on jump scares, and it wasn't the greatest movie ever. And then The Strangers Prey at Night was a really fun movie with a lot of great atmosphere. It was very different tonally, but I really enjoyed it, and I liked both of those movies enough to want to go watch and see this, especially since it was announced that this director was going to have 3 installments of whatever this new experience for these characters was going to be like. And the movie I'm going to be discussing with you today is The Strangers Chapter 1. The Strangers Chapter 1 is directed by Renny Harlin. After their car breaks down in an eerie small town, a young couple are forced to spend the night in a remote cabin. Panic ensues as they are terrorized by 3 masked strangers who strike with no mercy and seemingly no motives. So, as I said, I enjoyed the first 2 Strangers films to a degree. I thought that they were a lot of fun, and so I wanted to watch this movie just to check them out. And this movie was horrible. I absolutely hated it. I think that it has no understanding of what makes the original Strangers film so successful. And then honestly, it just tries to be a ripoff of the original movie without doing anything new or creative. It just does everything worse. And I'll talk about that when I break down the entire film as a whole. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Maya and Ryan, who are traveling together. It's getting close to their anniversary, and they stumble upon this small town in Oregon, and their car breaks down while they're in this diner eating. While they're in this diner, they get this really eerie vibe from all the people in this town. You can't tell whether or not it's just like, oh, these are people that are outsiders, they don't understand the way that they live, or if there's something creepier going on underneath the surface. And they go to this diner, they end up leaving, their car breaks down, and they go back in and talk to some of the people. And there's a waitress at the diner who is seemingly very friendly, and she's very kind to them and says, hey, there's one guy who runs an Airbnb in this town, and he makes some money doing that. He just doesn't do it while it's hunting season. You can get into contact with him, and maybe he'll be able to provide you a place to stay. They end up getting a hold of him, finding this place to stay, which is a remote cabin in the middle of nowhere. And they start spending time together, laughing it off like, oh, this is something we'll look back on and just find kind of funny. And as you would expect, the 3 masked characters from the original Strangers film show up at the house. It's the very same circumstance. The woman walks up to the door, knocks on the door, asks if that woman is home. They say, no, we don't know who you're talking about. And then they start terrorizing the two. And the entire film is these 2 people trying to survive the evening. So as I said, I thought this movie was absolutely horrible. I will say I do think the 2 lead actors do a fine job with the material that they're given. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to work with here, unfortunately. And everyone else in the film is fine. I think that the reliance on trying to make the guy who runs the auto mechanic shop really creepy and it just doesn't work because we know exactly where it's going to go. I get there's some characters introduced in the diner that the director's trying to be like, oh, could this be the masked characters? Could they be hiding in plain sight? Blah, blah, blah. None of the incorporation of those characters really does anything to build up any sort of atmosphere. And that's my biggest issue with this movie, is that it completely and totally lacks atmosphere. What I love so much about the original Strangers movies, despite its flaws, is you're kind of just dropped into this situation, and the director of that film, Bryan Bertino, does such an amazing job at building atmosphere through musical cues and through honestly just the quiet, and forcing you to stare at something in the shadows that causes you to feel this really immense terror of feeling safe and oh, you're with this person that you love, and you just went to a wedding and you're trying to enjoy yourself and be happy, but you're being creeped on in this intimate situation where like these people shouldn't be here. They're invading your space and they want to cause you harm. This movie does not give you any of that. It's kind of just like, oh, their car broke down, they're in this space. The characters aren't really fleshed out enough to where you care all that much. And I feel like in the original Strangers film, they do a good job at building up some tension between the characters to make you care when they're in danger. These characters, their dialogue is really bad. The connection they try to build with them feels very inauthentic. So when they're put in danger, you don't really feel any of that tension. And so much of the danger early on in the movie is like bland jump scares. Like they don't do anything, just kind of putting a character in a space. Like the lead character, Maya, she's like taking a shower at one point, and we see the one masked character in the mirror of the bathroom, but there's no real tension or suspense or anything in that moment. Or like he's sitting in the chair while she's playing piano at one moment, and there's just something about it, like the lighting of the film and the framing of the shots, that don't add to that tension to make you as a viewer feel any sort of fear. And then towards the middle to third act, when things are supposed to be getting like really bombastic and chaotic, I just felt like everything was so cliche and felt like something I'd seen 100,000 times before in home invasion films and movies of the past, that just made it kind of grating and irritating. And the characters make completely and total nonsensical decisions that you're just asking yourself, why in the hell would you do this? Like, why would you be this way? There's like a moment where the lead actress sees one of the girls in the mask in the house, and when the guy comes back into the room, she's like telling him, and he's like, did you smoke too much pot? Are you up in your... And it's like, you saw a human being standing in your room. There's no amount of pot that you're gonna smoke that's gonna make you feel like you're seeing a human being chase after you in a house. I don't know, there's so many moments where I'm like, God, people writing this movie have any sort of like logic or sense of what it would be like in that situation. And I'm a person who, I fight a lot of times in movies with people when characters make nonsensical decisions. You never know in that moment when your adrenaline is at a million what you would do if you're fighting for your life. You might make a stupid decision, but there are certain conversations and things in this movie surrounding it that are just like, they're just dumb. It's like they didn't think about this dialogue or think about how people would react in this situation in a way that makes any sort of sense, even if the sense is stupid. And that really got irritating after a while as well. I did not like the way that they left this open-ended to do another chapter. Like it just feels like they're trying to make money. It didn't feel like there was enough here that warrants me caring about there being another movie. And it's really unfortunate because, as I said, I enjoyed the first Strangers film, and I thought Pray at Night was fun. It was a nice way to bring these characters back into the scene without it feeling like the same thing. That movie took kind of a fresh take that felt exciting, despite the fact that the movie had just as many flaws as the original film did. It was still an entertaining experience, and this movie is by no means like the worst thing I've ever seen. It is just the same thing as the original, but way worse. And I don't really see any need to justify watching this. There's no real reason for this to exist in the Strangers universe. And if they're gonna do more movies, I hope that they find a way to freshen it up or make it way more exciting. And the fact that the same director is attached to those sequels does not really give me any hope. So have you seen The Strangers Chapter 1? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really bad. I don't have a lot of positive things to say, and honestly, I would just skip it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.